You're right. We should head over to the West because I know you were about to suggest that. I can read your mind.
Get out of there. I didn't invite you in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the Western Conference, only 14 teams. Uh-oh. We got a
Uh-oh.
guest. Surprise guest. No way.
Great. So who did you have winning the Western Conference?
Grace says I had LAFC winning the Western Conference
No,
because
you
she knows
didn't. You
everything.
liar.
She knows everything. Yes, she
She's
does.
lying.
You're so smart. Well, we should talk about where everything finished. And it was like this. In 14th, there was San Jose, record-setting San Jose. We'll talk about that in a second. Sporting KC in 13th, St. Louis in 12th, Dallas in 11th, Austin in 10th, Portland and Vancouver 9th and 8th. The non-home advantage playoff spots were Colorado, Minnesota, and Houston. Then Seattle, RSL, LA Galaxy, and LAFC take the top four. We'll do the same thing. Anything off by 3.
Oh, well, we should run through our standings first, and then we can.
Oh yeah, people don't remember because they're we don't have as many religious followers as we should. But we'll get there. We're at 562 subscribers on YouTube, so kind of a big deal.
And 560 of them are not religious followers of this podcast.
Yeah, and we'll fix that. We'll get there at some point. But why don't you tell us who we got?
So I've got Austin at 14, SKC at 13, the Galaxy at 12, Houston at 11, Minnesota at 10, Colorado 9, San Jose 8, LAFC 7, Vancouver 6, RSL 5, St. Louis 4, Portland 3, Dallas 2, Seattle 1.
Yeah, and for me, I had San Jose 14, SKC 13, St. Louis 12. Oh, wait. No, I didn't. I wish I did.
Funny. Yeah.
No, I had Minnesota 14th, Austin 13th, San Jose 12th, SKC 11, Galaxy 10, LAFC 9, RSL 8, Houston 7, Colorado 6, Portland 5, St. Louis 4, Vancouver 3, FC Dallas 2, and Seattle at 1. Lots to talk about here, but let's both start with Minnesota, who made it to the 6th spot. While I had them dead last, you had them in 10th. And for me, I remember this very clearly. They didn't have a coach to start the year. That usually doesn't end well. Mix that with the fact that their coach that was supposed to start the year quit 2 weeks before the season, and their interim to the interim coach was left. that was enough for me to be like, all right, this is not going to be a fun year in Minnesota. Also, enemies of the pod, like they get that. You have to. That was all it was for me. I remember that clearly, and I wasn't impressed with their roster build either. I thought that they were really midfield heavy, and they didn't have enough going forward or in the back to be competitive. But what do I know? What do I know?
Not much, evidently.
Clearly.
I think they just have way more breakout stars than we had expected from them this season. And I think, Bongi Hlongwane is someone we obviously would have kept our eye on. We talked about him last year. Super strong year last year in all competitions. No way in shape or form, obviously, because he wasn't here at the start of the year. But I think even when we talked about him mid-year, neither of us expected Kelvin Yeboah to take off like he did since he's joined. He has been otherworldly for them. And then there was Tani Olawase as well, who had a much bigger year than I'm sure either of us could have ever expected from him. Only 10 starts and he got 8 goals, 5 assists just in the regular season. So very good production from him. And then even Robin Lurd as well.
Lurd,
you Lurd nerd. Obviously, I think we, both of us thought of him as a good player, but for him to have 20 goal contributions in the regular season is wild. I don't think either of us would have expected that from him or even expected him to be in that kind of role. So for them to kind of hit those levels from those players, I think was massive. You know who was very quietly disappointing this year?
Timo Pukki.
Yeah. 4 goals this year. I mean, I know he
Yeah.
didn't play a ton, but that's surprising.
Yep, no disagreements there. That was also on my list. It was like, well, and here's the thing, right? You watch halfway through the year, they were trying to figure out all this stuff. Timo Pukki wasn't playing. That Son Bin, who they brought in as like an attacker, was playing right wing back. Like it was just a nightmare at the start. I was like, what are we doing? And then
The
they
Ben
put it all
Olsen
together.
special.
Oh my God, hook it to my veins. I feel like every team needs to have one Ben Olsen-esque player,
Oh,
right? When when
100%.
when when Into the Coronavirus do their like these three new rules, that's going to be my proposal next time I'm on their show. Every team needs to have one player that plays completely out of position. Like doesn't have to be the
Yeah,
goalkeeper. Your goalkeeper be the same, but you striker at right wing back, center back at right mid, like something just insane.
100%.
Yeah, I'm here for it. Um, honestly, I think we were pretty close with the next two. So we had Austin in 13th and 14th. They finished in 10th. I think we're that's straight on. SKC 11th and 13th. They finished in 13th. One of us had San Jose 12th when they finished 14th. One of us had them in 8th. Let's talk. Who had them in 8th? That's
Uh,
crazy. That's crazy. I'll let
couldn't have
that
been
person
me.
speak.
It
Yeah,
must
I'll
have been
let that.
Grace.
No, Grace would never.
Grace, come on camera. We're calling for you.
Grace would never.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. I think I rode the high of getting that bold prediction right last year from them, and I just rode that right into the season. I felt like on paper they looked good going into the year. I've still had a lot of talented players on there. Rodriguez was really strong in defense for them last year. You had Espinoza, who's he's a superstar in this league. You've got a Bobasi who knows how to score tons of goals and had a really strong year last year. Then they were adding on new pieces as well in the defense. You were bringing in Vitor Costa and guy I'm forgetting the name, Bruno Wilson, that
Yeah.
guy. And I thought that would aid in the defense. They brought in Pellegrino, who scored like a bajillion goals in Norway, and then they were rumored to Carlos Vela as well, which would have just been like the cherry on top. Plus, I think they even had a designated player spot open. So I thought there was good potential for them. I think they did get hit a bit with the injury bug, especially at goalkeeper, similar to Philly. They lost Daniel and Marcinkowski, so they got stuck with William Yarbrough, which that had a big impact on them this year. But I think even with Daniel, they probably weren't getting up to eighth. So there seemed to be locker room issues as well. And then that all kind of culminated in them being the worst defensive team in history.
Legendary. And then we got to talk about the LA Galaxy. You had them in 12th. I had them in 10th. They finished in second.
Good Lord, that was a bad one.
And this is, by the way, for those of you who are new here, this is always how it works. I'm in South Carolina. Connor's up in New York. We're both Eastern Conference fans, and the Western Conference is just way too late for us. So these are just straight out of the dark here.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the way it's got to be sometimes, but we move.
I think just no way, shape, or form did we expect their. I guess it's kind of twofold, right? Like, I think we expected their attack to be better than their defense, but I don't think we expected the attack to be as good as they were. To have four players on your team with over 15 goal contributions is insane. Gabriel Peck hit levels that neither of us probably combined could have expected. He absolutely took off this year. Joveljic finally showed what we were expecting from him to do last year, and then he kind of failed at that. And then I feel like the biggest thing is the defense. Like we had talked about it, we looked at that team, we're like, this team is going to be garbage defensively. They're going to be a wreck. The reality is they just weren't that bad. I mean, they weren't a top defensive team, but they only conceded 50. Like that's easily going to be able to put you in contention when you're scoring 69 goals a year. Like
Nice.
nice. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think Vanny did a really good job. They brought in good pieces, and those pieces I think outplayed what we even expected from them. And then defensively, John McCarthy was phenomenal this year. He was fantastic for the Galaxy in goal, and I feel like the experience from some of these guys actually paid off a little bit in the back line. So it all culminated in a strong, really strong season for the Galaxy.
Yeah, well, and you hit it on the head, right? Like our biggest issue with this team, and we did it with our not so deep dives, was this team defensively is going to be a nightmare, and we hit them hard for it. And you can say whether that was true or not, but one of the things that our guest, corner of the galaxy, mentioned was you don't have to worry about it if your attack is that good. And we were like, yeah, you're right. But, Puig hadn't hit those levels yet, and we weren't sure about Payne, so we weren't sure about Peck. I don't even know if they were signed at that point. I think those were like rumors when we were doing that episode. And they came in and they were the first team with 4 10+ goal scorers. And Puig was, I should have predicted this too, right? Because I predicted Puig MVP last year, which of course means he was going to do it this year.
He's not winning MVP. It's
Well,
okay.
he's not even but he had those numbers where it was like, oh, maybe, and that was important. So, yep, we slept on him for sure, but won't do that again, hopefully.
I don't know how you could. I don't know how you could have predicted that Peck was going to hit the levels that he did. He was coming off like a 12 goal contribution season with 15th place at Vasco da Gama, and that was his best season yet. And then he comes into MLS and drops 28 goal contributions. Like, how are we supposed to see that coming?
If you knew ball, if you knew
Well,
ball,
clearly we don't.
which we do not.
No, we
That's
do not.
okay. Speaking of Ball, Benny Ball, I believe you have an apology to offer because of the disrespect you dropped on Benny Ball's name.
One of these years I'll get it right. I'm just gonna keep dropping them low enough and eventually.
That's what I do with Chicago. Like eventually they're gonna make the playoffs. I
That's
know
what I
it.
hope for. One day I will be correct. I'm holding out hope. But yeah, they were much better than I had expected them to be. They were super strong defensively. I think I had questions about them in the attack, which I think held some validity this season. I don't think they were anything special in the attack. They didn't even their highest goal scorer had 6 goals, so I feel very justified in feeling that way about the attack. Um, but defensively, they were so much better than I probably gave them credit for. Steve Clark, the ageless wonder, was phenomenal in goal. Him and Brad Guzan run it back, send them to San Jose with Big Bruce. That's the best goalkeeper union in the league. I'm saying it now. But yeah, no, seriously, Steve Clark was amazing this season, and the guys in front of him were just as good as well. And not even just the defensive line too. Like that is a strong midfield for the defense. Karaskia and Artur is a fantastic midfield duo, and I need to give them better credit next year because I feel like if I looked at certain positions and didn't see the final standings, like if I saw Hector Herrera had 2 goal contributions the whole year and I saw that nobody had more than 6 goals scored, I would have been like, yeah, my prediction was definitely right. So their defense, I think, was massive for them this year.
Yep. And you remember in our not so deep dive when we asked Noodle Time and we were like, how do you guys feel about Steve Clark? Like he's getting up there in age. There's not a lot of depth behind him. Like, what do we think? And then he goes out and drops like a top 5 goalkeeper in the league performance for the season. Like, just
It's
silly.
crazy.
It's
It's
just silly.
crazy.
This just show like you just can't predict this stuff. You just can't. Like, who would have thought that Bragazon, after being one of the worst goalkeepers in the league last year, would have come out and done what he did? Right? Genuinely, if Bragazon even has 3 games more like he did last year, Atlanta don't make the playoffs. I mean, look what he did. Look what he did in the playoffs, right? Look what he did against Miami. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, apparently he came in he came in pretty slimmed down into this year, so I think he really put in some extra training in the offseason. But 40-year-old Brad Guzan being 7th in PSXG plus minus is straight to my veins.
You combine your biggest meme with your biggest stat, and it just straight into Connor's veins.
Straight in there.
We both kind of, me more than you, but we both have to apologize to LAFC as well. I had him 9th, you had him 7th. They won the West. And for
Okay,
me,
but I feel like we were fair in that. They had
no,
like
no
4 players
disagreements.
on the team.
Yeah, listen, they came in and they had Grace. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, baby. We are allowed to be wrong on something. It's okay.
I know. She's yelling at us because she had LAFC first, apparently.
Yeah, no. She's like, how could you not know? No, completely fair. The the idea that they showed up and they had I don't think they had enough to even make an 18. And then they had like that center back, the Italian center back they brought in to be like the Chiellini replacement, the 19-year-old, tore his ACL on like day 3. It's like, okay, well, this really isn't good. But that starting 11 just found a way. And you know what? They changed their style too. Like they went from this possession, like dominate the game to, all right, Denny Bouanga, Mateus Bogusz, and Oliveira, just wait. We're just going to win the ball and we're going to kick it really far. And then you guys just do what you do. And Denny Bouanga had 20 goals again. And Matty Bogusz had 15 goals. And Oliveira had 20 goal contributions. And it just worked. And teams, for whatever reason, couldn't figure out, maybe don't let the fast guys run at you with no pressure. I don't know. And they got better over the course of the year as well. They added pieces. Lewis O'Brien, for example. Atuesta coming in right before the end of the transfer window was good. The biggest thing for them, they were healthy. Very, very few times where you're like, oh man, they're going to be missing a key starter for 4 to 6 weeks, which I think every other team had to deal with at some point. That is a big positive for them, no doubt.
No, that's totally fair. I think you probably you probably look over the fact that they were so healthy, like you had said, which is kind of incredible in this, considering how many games everybody has to play.
Well, and that's the thing, right? You assume that at least one or two starters are going to have some long-term injury, right? And then you look at their depth and you're like, 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 15-year-old, 21-year-old, like no experience whatsoever. It's like you're going to get eaten up in this league if you're not ready. And they just never had to rely on them. They had their 3 subs that they would bring in every single time, and they were solid.
Yeah, I think
So
they got a bit fortunate in that regard.
yeah, 100%. And sometimes you need to be,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you need to be.
You know what? The biggest crime about this team is the fact that Hugo Lloris is a goalkeeper of the year finalist.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one. I think
That's Yeah, we
that's a
can
little
talk
bit of
about that. We can talk about that in our next predictions review
yes.
episode.
That's a little bit of a Daddy Don slide that in there, I think, personally, but that's just
Oh
me.
yeah, 100%.
Look, Antoine, if you see your friends getting awards, come here, you can get some too.
We got this MVP finalist spot saved just for you.
Look, it's gonna be you, Messi, and Luis Suarez. You guys are gonna be just like best friends again.
We'll even change the name of the MVP award for you.
The Lionel Messi, Landon Donovan, Antoine Griezmann MVP award. Oh man. All right, we'll get to that. What I do need to do is I need to offer an apology to RSL, who I put just barely in the playing game, and who ran the show. Chicho Aranjo, of course, was huge. I did not expect him to have any sort of help. I thought Diego Luna was going to be good, not great. And I do believe that the other side of it was I wasn't thrilled with their defense. I thought their defense was relatively mid and their goalkeepers were relatively mid. But again, kind of like LA Galaxy, when your attack is so good, you don't have to worry about that. And they had Chicho Aranjo, who was scoring goals left, right, and center. Carlos Gomez, who was scoring left, right, and center. Diego Luna was contributing a ton. Like they had the pieces to compensate for that. And then they added to that, right? Matty Crooks was okay. They brought in a couple of players in the winter who also contributed a little bit as well. The Polish winger, I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try, but he's done all right in a small sample size. And they also got rid of a couple players that I like too, right? I remember Jasper Loffelson going to Colorado. I was like, that might be a big hurt. He's a good depth piece. He can rotate in really well in that midfield. They ended up not needing to miss him too much. So,
Well, no apology needed from me. You're welcome,
yeah,
RSL fans. I'm a
that
true
is
fan.
true. Something like that. I guess Portland's our next real one we got to talk about, where I had them 5, you had them 3. They finished 9. Did we oversell their defense like ridiculously? Yes.
Maybe.
Are we sorry about it? No.
No.
Not even remotely. Because was this team a hell of a lot of fun to watch this year? You're damn right they were. Were they winning 5-0? Maybe. Were they losing 5-0? Maybe. Were they winning 3-2, 4-3, 7-6? Who knew? But you know what? You tuned in every week because it was a heck of a lot of fun.
MLS 4.0, they adopted
Oh,
it for sure.
man. Big, like I said, you know who should win Coach of the Year? Gary Neville, for embracing the MLS 4.0 ideology to the point where he made Portland fun.
Is it Gary? Isn't it Phil?
That's what I said. I said Phil Neville.
You said Gary.
No, I said Phil Neville.
You'll watch back the clip and you'll see.
What? When I say Phil Neville should have won MLS Coach of the Year?
No, you said Gary.
Well, good thing I've got editing power where I could say clip that and then put it over here and then delete everything else.
So I actually, when I look at this team, it feels kind of similar to the Galaxy, where they just have like elite attackers who just went on goal scoring tears this year. And they also had 4 people finish with 15 plus goal contributions, which is exactly what the Galaxy did too. And they even have an MVP type player with Evander, although doesn't sound like he wants to be there anymore. Well, maybe debatably, but defensively they were definitely worse than the Galaxy, which is saying something because I think we looked at a backline of Kamal Miller, Zach McGraw, Maxime Crepeau, and we thought that Canadian trio was going to be fantastic for them, and they just were not. They were not. I mean, McGraw didn't see a lot of game time this year. He had less than 1,000 minutes played, and Crepeau was garbage. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He was trash this year. Um, Pantemis was a lot better, and I think probably showed in the fact that Pantemis had 15 matches played, and I think that probably had a huge effect. I mean, that's got to be a big mentality thing. You would talk. I think we talked about it with Philly, maybe Philly or San Jose, where you let a bad goal in and mentality drops, heads drop. You have less motivation to play in that game. I feel like maybe that could have been the case for Portland because they certainly scored enough to be in the where we had predicted them.
Yep. Well, and that was the thing. We overhyped that back line ridiculously. I mean, to the point where Maxime Crepeau was benched for their playoff game against Vancouver. Now, granted, that didn't go so hot, but when you don't even trust the guy that you spent as much money as you did to bring in, Kamal Miller didn't start that game. The Zach McGraw didn't even make the bench in that game, right? You get to the end of the year and these three guys were like, these are going to be lockdown defenders for the entire year. No, two of them don't play. One of them came in halfway through the season or halfway through the second half. Like, that's terrifying. And again, you had those attackers that you were mentioning, right? I mean, Jonathan Rodriguez came in at halfway through the year and put up almost 20 goals, right? Evander had 15 goals and however many assists, like MVP level, conversation. Even Felipe Mora. I mean, how many times you hear Felipe Mora's name this year in
Barely.
any conversation? None. He had 14 goals.
I know.
Like,
It's
how
crazy.
ridiculous is that? Like, and that's the thing where it's like, and then you have Anthony who's got 7 goals. You've got other wingers contributing 7 goals here and there. Like, that attack should be top 5 at least. And here they are barely getting in because they can't keep a ball out of the net. Shocking.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, we both had St. Louis at 4. Not great. I think we both
Not the
expected
best.
we both expected a regression, right? But maybe not that far. And we were talking about it with STLsoccernews.com that I don't think anybody expected them to repeat at the top of the West, but man, oh man, I thought it was insane how far they fell. But again, we talked about it in the not so deep dives, right? Or in the what went wrong, where
You did the same thing as me.
listen, you're rubbing off on me. What can I say? That their system got figured out. They completely regressed back to the norm in terms of underperforming what people expected of them, right? No goal, golden boot contender. I think what was the numbers that we said? They over exceeded their expected goals by 20 last year, and here it was like over 3. So, you come back down to the norm, and then your defense is not nearly as strong as it was last year. It's gonna hurt you, and that's what we see here.
Well, that and like nobody could score. I mean, like their highest goal scorer had 5 goals this year. That's crazy. That's even worse than Houston's. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't want to take away Andrew's thing here, but like, you got to kick the ball through the white post things in order to win games. And
this is true.
I feel like they needed a more dominant goal scorer. And I think we were starting to see that a little bit towards the end of the year. I think their additions were good. I think the last thing they need to do in this upcoming offseason is I shouldn't say the last thing, but one of the things they need to do in this upcoming offseason is to beef up that defense. And I feel like they have the attackers there. I think they have good attackers, that have a little bit of experience now and showed good flashes. I don't think they're super far away from being able to compete in the playoffs again. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know, but maybe I'm spoiling a little bit for next year too. But I at least see like a path forward for them as opposed to some other teams.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think they come back somewhere in the middle there. They probably won't get top 4 again, but they'll be okay. I like the way that they ended the season. I think they'll come back all right. Vancouver letting us down again.
Not me.
I had them third. You had them sixth. They finished 8th. Bought into the Brian White, Ryan Gauld thing, and when they got hurt and didn't play, they were not very good. I am begging for a year where Vancouver just isn't mid. Like I just want them to be so much more fun than they are. And like they again they go into playoff games and beat teams 5-0, but they can't beat the big guys. I think that's where they fail. They don't really have. They're starting to build a better team where they can compete with the big guys, but they haven't beaten them yet, for the most part. So I think what was the LAFC scoreline? I think that like the last 5 games they played against LAFC, they've given up like 16 goals or something like that. Like they just get beat up. So it just be better, guys. Come on, I wanna brag about you guys.
It's hard to be better when you have one striker on your entire roster.
Yeah, but he's like he makes
He
Erling
is
Haaland look like Tom Barlow.
he's good when he's out there, but it's like the minute he's hurt, that's it. You have nobody there now. False nine Brian Galt, I guess. Give him some help, you know? Bring in Tom Barlow. I'm sure he'll be available.
Uh,
Reunite.
that'd be something. That'd be
You'd
something, wouldn't it?
be Vancouver's #1 fan.
I would. I totally would.
I feel like we maybe only have one left to talk about.
We do here, and it is our friends. Let's talk about both of them because we both had a team to win the West and they didn't. So we should talk about what happened. But we both, and this is the one that everybody's been waiting for. We have to apologize for FC Dallas, the team that we put the podcast curse on this year. Every time there's one, and this one it was Dallas. You got a double host putting you in second in your conference just to finish outside the playoffs. We talked about it a lot on what went wrong. Injuries killed you. You missed a lot of time with a lot of your big players, and you had no depth. There was nobody to take the next step, and that hurt you. Isn't that right, Grace? Yes, it is.
Yeah, it was like a one-man show in the attack. I mean, Musa was doing everything that he could to try to carry this team to any bit of success, and it felt like everybody else was holding him back. They're like, "Hey, not this season, Peter. Not this
Yeah,
season."
and yeah,
Um,
and he still played well, didn't he?
he did, yeah, 16 goals. It's pretty crazy. Yeah,
One
I
and
mean,
again,
to say that I had higher expectations for them would be an understatement, considering I had them as MVP and goalkeeper of the year from this team.
you did.
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say like I don't think we were necessarily like out of pocket for this prediction either. You look at him and it's like you're bringing in Pitar Musa, who 16 goals with nobody behind him, right? Paul Arriola, Alan Velasco, Jesus Ferreira in a 10, which we were all hyped about because we always thought that was his better position anyway. Behind him is E.R. Amende and a Paxton Pomacall who can play in a more preferred role. And a back line with Nkosi and Martin Paez. And like on paper, it was a great team. And then everybody got hurt. It's like, okay, now what?
The academy is the next step.
Yeah, which
It's
is
a
weird
15,
because you would think
16-year-olds.
that they'd have the next the next guy ready to go. And
Well,
they
I
just
feel like
didn't.
if they had the next guy, he'd be starting,
Yeah.
as opposed to like just being the bench guy. I feel like the bench guys are maybe not the ones that are going to be your next Ricardo Pepis.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, Dallas. We're gonna make sure that we put you dead last next year so that
Yeah, we got
we
you.
can make
We'll
up. Yeah,
fix
we'll
this
make up
next
for
year.
it. And then last but not least, we both had Seattle winning. They finished in fourth. It wasn't terrible, but why did you have them winning?
I feel like because half of my prediction I think was true, and then half was not. So the half that I think was true was the defense. Like every year, you kind of know Seattle's going to be good defensively, and of course they were again this year. They were fantastic defensively. I think it was the attack that let them down a little bit, considering like 51 goals is certainly not the worst. But you look at the two teams ahead of them, and the three teams ahead of them, and they scored significantly more goals than they did. Maybe that's just a sign of a shift in the way that you're successful in this league. You just have to score goals. And Seattle didn't do that. They were as strong as they were defensively, and I think that carried them to fourth. But in the attack, it was a two-man show. It was Jordan Morris and it was Albert Rusnak, and that was it. So if if either of those guys were not firing off that day, it was going to be tough for Seattle to pull out points, and that's exactly what happened. I thought De La Vega was going to be healthier this year and contribute a bit more than he did. Obviously, he was banged up with some injuries, but even when he did play, he wasn't. Yeah, he only had 1 goal, 1 assist in like 650 minutes, and there just wasn't. I mean, do you count Jordan Morris as a striker? I don't really know.
Yeah, I would.
Okay,
I mean, you
well
should.
then,
He's starting for the men's national team at the World Cup, so
yeah. I mean, one can only hope.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just think I thought they'd get more out of their attack than they did, even though Rusnak had a fantastic year and Morris was solid as well.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I think we both expected them to be really, really solid defensively. We thought that they had really decent starting 11, right? Nuhu on the left, Roldan on the right, Roldan in the middle, Gomez and Reagan and Stefan Fry, and then De La Vega comes in, and they don't know where they're going to play him, but it'll be good. He'll be fine. They'll figure it out. And I thought that it all was just going to come together, and this was going to be like that group's last ride into the sunset, right? Rui Diaz is going to finish really well. Leo Chu, I thought was going to be way better than he was, and I think is he gone now? Did they move him on? No, he's
That
still
I'm
there,
not
but
sure.
I remember there were rumors that he'd be moved on, but then maybe he got hurt. Yeah, he got hurt. Um, so I thought he like him with De La Vega on opposite sides, and just I thought there was so much that came together for this group, and it just never did. Now, that's not saying they were any bad, right? I mean, fourth is not bad, but they didn't do enough, like you mentioned. They were strong defensively, but that only does so much if you can't score goals.
Yeah,
Yep,
completely agree.
couldn't agree with you more.